Hey, right, sort of part 2 of my viewer request videos on the Classic 350. This time comparing it with the outgoing 500 model. Unfortunately, I don't have one of the old 350s to compare it with, but I think it's going to be a pretty obvious, huge improvement over the original 350 model. What most people seem to be interested in is the difference between the old 500 and the new current Classic 350. Now, before we get into this properly, I would just like to announce that there will be no Friday's video this week. I got a call inviting me to a bike event down south in that Brighton, which is even further away than that London. Now, it wasn't sort of ratified until late Friday afternoon. I had a busy weekend planned already. And then, of course, I had to get this video sorted, ready for publication on Wednesday. So I've not had time to prepare anything else for Friday. I'm travelling down there on Wednesday. I'm at the event on Thursday. And I won't be able to get home until late Thursday evening. So, I've got nothing to post for Friday morning. Sorry about that. The good news is it's an event that I think you will be very much interested in. And I'll be uploading a video on it next Wednesday. Right, let's get on. Now, I think this is probably going to be one of the most difficult sort of comparisons or reviews that I've ever done. I love Royal Enfield, as you know. I love the new Classic 350, but also I've had this long-term love affair with the mule, the Classic 500. And it's really difficult to be objective, but I'm going to try my best. Now, for those that have been asking, no, I'm not getting rid of the mule. I've bonded with this bike in a way that I've never bonded with any other motorcycle before. This bike has a real personality. It's by no means perfect. In a lot of ways quite agricultural and rough around the edges, but nowhere near as bad as the motorcycle press has portrayed it to be over the years. Now, I've got no idea whether Royal Enfield intends releasing another Classic 500 in the future, or at least something along similar lines, but the problem is these bikes have now been out of production for over a year, I think. Second-hand examples with low mileage can be had, but they go for a premium these days, and of course there is the odd new model on showroom floors here and there, though they are getting much thinner on the ground now. So a second-hand example in good condition is going to cost you very similar money to the new Classic 350 from the showroom floor. That's when they actually have them on the showroom floor, because demand is outstripping supply at the moment. And if you can find a new example of the old 500 on a showroom floor, anecdotal stories from viewers tell me that you can pay substantially more than the original retail price. Now, as you know, in sort of my reviews and videos, I'm not really into specifications, because specifications are relative. Quite often, what seems like an advantage or disadvantage on paper becomes irrelevant in practice. And that is very much the case with these two bikes. I commented in my original review of the new Classic 350 that I suspected both bikes were a similar weight, although I noticed that the new Classic 350 is much easier to manoeuvre around. It felt much lighter, although I at the time thought that was possibly more to do with weight distribution than actual weight. But according to the handbook, there is a substantial weight difference between the two bikes. The total mass in running order of the old Classic 500 is 270 kilograms, with what they call a maximum permitted weight of 365 kilograms. So that's the weight of the bike plus the rider. That bike has a maximum payload of 95 kilograms. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because the new Classic 350 has a curbside weight of 195 kilograms, almost a third less than the old Classic 500. But it has a maximum permissive weight of 375 kilograms. so it's able to carry almost twice the weight that the old 500 could. It can handle 180 kilograms payload compared to the 95 kilograms of the old 500. And then look at the power to weight ratio. The old 500 I think was just under 28 horsepower, whereas the new 350 is slightly over 20 horsepower. So just for the sake of argument, the new 350 has about a third less horsepower than the old 500, but it's approximately 1/3 lighter, so the power to weight ratio actually is very similar. Now granted, for the moment, as far as I'm concerned, this is just theory. I've not finished running in the 350 yet, so I've not had a chance to open her up properly to see what she can do. But mathematics is mathematics, and the last time I looked, mathematics don't lie. I can't find any reference to the maximum quoted speed in the handbook for the 350, although anecdotally it's been relayed to me as just over 70 miles an hour. But I know from experience that in the right conditions the old 500 can just manage an indicated 80-84 miles an hour, tested on a private racetrack obviously. But the biggest takeaway that you should take from that statement is that it's in the right conditions. Ordinarily, if you've got a bit of a headwind, or even if you're going up a slight incline, 70 is about the best she will manage. You've basically got to be going downhill with a tailwind to achieve that top speed. Now, I've had a lot of questions from people on the various videos that I've made in recent weeks that have the 500 and they're thinking of PXing it in for a 350, but they don't want to give up the performance that they've got used to with the 500. I'm going to stick my neck out here and say, with both bikes, with a single rider without pillion, the performance between the two is going to be negligible. We all automatically think that horsepower and CCs trump everything else. A bigger bike is better than a smaller bike, but there's a decade and a half of technical research and development on Royal Enfield's part between the two engines of these bikes. And despite the two bikes looking very similar in stature, Royal Enfield have managed to shave almost a third of the curbside weight off the 350 compared to the old 500. The new 350 is very sprightly. I have been surprised by how responsive she is. In real life, real world scenarios, the 350 has never felt to me to be underpowered compared with its big sister. And I do believe that that is down to the two power to weight ratios. Performance is basically the same. Now obviously if you add a pillion to the 350 it is going to bog it down somewhat. But the 350 will take two well-grown grown-ups, whereas the old 500 in essence can only take one. Despite its light weight, the 350's frame has been beefed up compared to the old 500 frame, so it's simple. On paper she can carry more weight. Now, I know I've spent a lot of time sort of answering this question about the power difference between the two, because that seems to be the main concern of most people inquiring. And I get that. The old 500's power and performance was adequate, no more. And people looking to get out of one of the old 500s and into the new 350s don't want to be stepping down to something which is seriously underpowered compared to what they're used to. Well, on paper and from my experience so far, you're not going to encounter that problem. Now, where the new 350 starts to pull ahead is the way that that engine delivers that performance. It is silky, smooth and vibration free. The gearbox is without a doubt better than that of the 500, although the 500's wasn't bad. Now, I'll stick by everything I've ever said about the 500. It is nowhere near as vibrative, if you like. In fact, I'm not even sure if that's the word, as the motorcycle press has made out over the years. And Royal Enfield has come a long way since then. They've learned a lot of lessons and they've upped the game, and it really shows with the 350. It's like riding a twin. As I said in the original review, there are times when you pull up at traffic lights that I thought the engine had cut out because it's that smooth. The development and design of the old 500 engine was a response to emissions regulations around the world, to get the brand internationally viable again, whilst at the same time not alienating their own domestic Indian market. The Bullet is a cult figure in the motorcycling world in India, and it was important for Royal Enfield at the time not to remove too much of the character that the bike was famous for. Since then, the world has changed, demographics have changed. Royal Enfield's position in the international motorcycle world is a very different one to what it was 15 years ago. So their bikes need to be able to appeal to a much wider audience. I think it's fair to say that some of the character of the old classic has been sanitised out of the new 350. It's been lost. Not all of it, but some of it. And I know some people will lament that. In a way, I do. But I think the new 350 is something rather special. Modern riders and new riders are going to prize refinement and comfort over character. And that's exactly what the 350 delivers, whilst giving you a very similar performance package to the old 500. All wrapped up with what is undoubtedly a better and more premium motorcycle. The new 350 is not the metal monster that the 500 was. Royal Enfield have incorporated a lot more plastics into its build, which is no doubt partly responsible for that weight reduction. And whilst that does remove some of the vintage appeal, it does come with the added advantage that there are going to be fewer parts where corrosion could possibly become a problem. The old classic was a genuine classic, a proper metal motorcycle from the 1940s, or as near as you're going to get without buying a bike from the 1940s. In contrast, some of the chrome-plated plastic parts on the new 350 do feel and look a bit cheap and tacky. I'm not sure if there's any incentive to Royal Enfield to alter some of these details, but the aftermarket's parts people are definitely going to come to the rescue with some of these components. Part of the old 500's appeal for a lot of people was its uncomplicated basic nature, and I understand the appeal. That's part of what I love about the bike, but the new 350 has a USB port for charging your mobile phone on the fly. It has hazard warning lights, a proper fuel gauge and a clock, 2 trip meters which do come in handy, things that modern riders, especially new riders, expect on even the most basic motorcycle these days. And love them or hate them, these type of electronic gadgets were exactly what a lot of riders have been screaming out for over a decade. So Royal Enfield had to respond to that. So my final assessment for this video, I've got a long way to go with this bike yet, so it may not be my final assessment ultimately, is that if you decide you want to part X your 500 for the new 350, you're not going to regret it. Or if you're sitting on the fence trying to decide between the 500, a second-hand one, and the 350, although the engine capacities may make them seem like chalk and cheese, in actual fact, they are a very similar performing bike. There's not going to be much between them. The old classic 500 is going to be higher maintenance, there's no doubt about it. The new 350 is a much more modern machine, and there are certain benefits that come with that, more notably the longer service intervals. What it boils down to, in essence, is this, and I'm at risk of being cliched when I say this because I've said it before. By all means, take the practical differences between the two bikes into account when making your decision on what you want. We all have different priorities. some of which are voluntary and some of which are mandatory. If your head is going to rule your heart, the 350 is the bike to go for. But as I've always said, when it comes to motorcycles, they are a choice of the heart. Don't let practicality overrule emotion if you can afford to. The old 500 has the power of romance, which is a force to be reckoned with, and if you make the wrong choice, it could haunt you. Having said that, Royal Enfield have made such a good job of the new 350. I wouldn't be surprised if she isn't capable of casting the same spell. The genuine heritage of the Bullet is there. The 350 isn't a bootleg copy. It's the real deal, it's just the modern day real deal. After almost 90 years in production, the new 350 is the Bullet that the Bullet deserves to be. It would have been unfair to allow this model to stagnate and stay where it was. The important thing is that Royal Enfield have done it properly and with sensitivity. It's your money and your choice. Right, once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I hope those that have asked me the questions have got the answers that they were looking for. Either way, I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. I'll see you again next Wednesday with something special. So until then, please ride safely, and I'll see you soon.